On a September afternoon in 1984, in the small town of the Dalles, Oregon, a woman walked up to a salad bar. She wasn't hungry. In her hand, hidden low, was a small plastic bag filled with a light brown liquid. Quickly, quietly, she poured it into the dressing. Then she moved to the produce and splashed a little more. She called the liquid, almost affectionately, salsa, and then she walked out and let the townspeople eat. Within days, 751 people in this one small county were violently ill. 45 of them ended up in the hospital. And here is the part that should stop you cold. This was not an accident. It was not bad hygiene. It was deliberate. The largest bioterror attack ever carried out on American soil. And it was done, of all reasons, to win a local election. By the end of this, you'll know exactly why an entire American town got poisoned on purpose, and how the people who did it almost got away with something even worse. Welcome to Mortwick, the dark records, where the history they don't teach you in school turns out to be far stranger and far darker than the version you were given. To understand how we got to that salad bar, you have to go back a few years and meet the man at the center of it all. His name was Bhagwan Shree Rajneesh, an Indian mystic born in 1931 who by the 1970s had become something the world hadn't quite seen before, a guru for the modern West. He preached meditation, free love, capitalism, and self-discovery all at once. He mixed Eastern scripture with Western psychology, and Westerners, therapists, seekers, the disillusioned children of the 60s, came by the thousands. They wore ochre robes, took new names, and called themselves his sannyasins, his disciples. Basically a boy band fan club dressed up as a spiritual retreat. Same fanaticism, except instead of posters, you get an orange robe. Now Rajneesh took a vow of near silence for years and let others run things day to day. But he was not exactly living the humble ascetic life. By the end, he owned a collection of Rolls-Royce automobiles reported to number 93. Not one, 93. A Doflamingo tier villain, huge grin, invisible strings pulling every purse string in town, and a wardrobe paid for entirely with other people's money. In July of 1981, the movement bought a 64,000-acre ranch in the high desert of central Oregon near a tiny town called Antelope. They renamed it Rajneeshpuram, and at its peak, this place, this empty stretch of dust and sagebrush, held around 2,000 people who built a functioning city from nothing. But the real power at Rajneeshpuram wasn't the silent guru in the Rolls-Royce. It was his personal secretary, a woman named Sheela Silverman, known to everyone as Ma Anand Sheela. She ran the commune. She controlled who saw the guru, where the money went, and what happened to anyone who got in the way. And a great many people, it turned out, were getting in the way. Because Central Oregon in 1981 was ranch country, conservative, quiet, old, and now, dropped into the middle of it, was a city of 2,000 orange-clad disciples with armed security, their own police force, and a guru with more luxury cars than the entire county had traffic lights. The locals were alarmed, the commune felt persecuted, and the whole thing began to curdle into a war, fought not with guns at first, but with paperwork, permits, and votes. Here is where the story turns from strange to sinister. To build and expand their city, the Rajneeshis needed land use approvals. Those approvals were controlled by the county government, the Wasco County Commission, 3 seats. Win 2 of them, and you control the county. Control the county, and you control your own future. So the commune decided to do something audacious. They would simply win the election. Their first plan was almost creative. They launched a program to bring thousands of homeless people from New York, Chicago, Los Angeles, Phoenix, out to the commune. Feed them, house them, and register them to vote. Flood the county with new residents who would vote the way the commune wanted. Run like a corporate team-building retreat, except the grand prize was a rigged election. But the state of Oregon saw it coming.
Officials moved to block the new voter registrations, demanding hearings to check eligibility. The busing scheme stalled. The commune's clean, legal path to power was closing. And that is the moment the plan turned into something no one had ever tried before. If they couldn't add enough of their own voters, they would subtract the other side's. They would make the people of the Dalles, the county's largest town and the heart of the opposition, too sick to go to the polls. The commune had its own medical corporation, and inside it, a laboratory. According to investigators, members obtained a strain of Salmonella bacteria, Salmonella typhimurium, from a medical supply company in Seattle, and then they began to grow it themselves. They didn't start with the salad bars. They tested first. On the 29th of August, 1984, 2 Wasco County commissioners visited Rajneeshpuram. They were given water to drink. That water had been deliberately contaminated. Both men fell ill afterward, one of them seriously. It was a trial run, proof that the method worked. If someone offers you mystery water at a commune, say no. And since you're already making good choices, subscribe. With the trial a success, they scaled up. Across September and October of 1984, in the weeks before the November election, members of the commune fanned out across the Dalles. They carried their light brown liquid, the stuff they nicknamed salsa, into restaurant after restaurant. 10 restaurants, salad bars, salad dressings, produce, and, reportedly, coffee creamers and even water. They poured it, splashed it, and spread it wherever they could. And then they waited. The effect was immediate and brutal. Across the Dalles, people were struck down with violent food poisoning, cramps, fever, vomiting, dehydration. 751 people fell ill. 45 were hospitalized. The elderly, an infant, no one, it seemed, was spared. By some miracle, and it truly was one, no one died, and the town was terrified. One resident later described it. People wouldn't go out. They wouldn't go out alone. They were becoming prisoners in their own homes. Nobody knew what was happening. Nobody knew who was next. Here's the twist the commune didn't see coming. When the outbreak hit, health officials did investigate, and they got it wrong. The official conclusion, at first, was that the outbreak came from poor hygiene among restaurant workers, bad hand-washing, a local mistake. The idea that someone had done this on purpose was, at the time, almost unthinkable. In 1984, this sounded less like a police report and more like a scrapped X-Files episode.
But the poison did something its makers never anticipated. Instead of keeping people home, it enraged them. The people of the Dalles suspected, even without proof, that something had been done to them, and so on election day they turned out in force. Not fewer voters, more, all of them voting against the commune's candidates. The commune lost. The entire operation, the lab, the trial run, the 751 victims accomplished nothing, except to leave behind a trail that, sooner or later, someone was going to follow. From here, the plan falls apart piece by piece. Hit the bell so you don't miss the rest. For nearly a year, it stayed buried. And then, in the fall of 1985, the whole thing came apart. Not because of an outside detective, but because of a civil war inside the commune itself. Ma Anand Sheela and her closest circle suddenly fled Rajneeshpuram, leaving for Europe. And with them gone, the guru did something extraordinary. In September 1985, Rajneesh broke his silence and held a series of press conferences and publicly accused Sheela and her allies of a staggering list of crimes. The greatest buck-passing in cult history, a mob boss calling a press conference to say he had no idea what his accountant was doing. Investigators who had been circling the immigration and financial crimes for months now had their opening. On October 2, 1985, an FBI-led task force entered Rajneeshpuram with search warrants, and in the commune's own medical laboratory, they found it: glass vials containing Salmonella. When the CDC analyzed the strain, it was a match.
the exact same bacteria that had sickened 751 people in the Dalles a year earlier. The mystery outbreak wasn't bad hygiene. It was, and remains to this day, the largest bioterror attack in the history of the United States. In July of 1986, Ma Anand Sheela and the nurse who ran the medical corporation, Ma Anand Pooja, entered what are called Alford pleas, not admitting guilt but accepting conviction, to charges including attempted murder and assault. Sheela was sentenced to 20 years. She served just 29 months before being paroled and leaving the country. But when investigators pulled on that thread, they found something the poisoning had only hinted at, because the salad bar attack was not the darkest thing this group had planned. There was a man named Charles Turner. He was the United States Attorney for the District of Oregon, the federal prosecutor investigating the commune's immigration fraud, the sham marriages leaders had used to stay in the country. If Turner succeeded, the commune's leadership could be deported. So Sheela and a small group of insiders made a decision. They would kill him. This was not an idle threat. In the spring of 1985, conspirators obtained false identification in New York. They bought 5 handguns, a Colt .38, and 4 Ruger .357 Magnums, and smuggled them into Oregon by bus to avoid airport metal detectors. One member obtained Turner's college yearbook photo, his license plate, his home address, and the location where he parked. They rented an apartment in Portland as a base. A starter kit for a crime thriller, fake IDs, a revolver, a dossier, like the darkest episode of a home organizing show, everything neatly labeled.
The plan was specific and cold-blooded. They would ambush Turner in the parking garage of the federal building where he worked. One conspirator would fake car trouble. The others would approach him with the guns, and one woman had volunteered to be the one who pulled the trigger. The murder was never carried out. As the commune tore itself apart in the chaos of 1985, the plot stalled and fell apart. Charles Turner never knew, in real time, just how close he had come, and investigators later confirmed he wasn't the only name. A journalist and the Oregon Attorney General were on a hit list, too. The commune collapsed almost overnight. Rajneesh himself pleaded guilty to immigration fraud, paid a $400,000 fine, and was deported from the United States. He drifted between countries, reportedly turned away by 21 of them, before returning to India, where he died in 1990. But the assassination plot took far longer to answer for. The conspirators had scattered across the world, and prosecutors chased them for over a decade. Guilty pleas and convictions trickled in 1990, 1991, and beyond. And on this very day, the 28th of July, 1995, more than 10 years after the plot was hatched, 2 of the key conspirators, Sally Ann Croft and Susan Hagen, were finally convicted by a jury for their part in the conspiracy to kill Charles Turner. The last of the prosecutions would stretch, remarkably, all the way into the 2000s. Justice took a decade. You only need a second to comment. What's the most absurd thing you've seen someone do just to win? Here is what stays with me about this story. We tend to imagine bioterror as something enormous and foreign, a lab in a hostile country, a shadowy state actor. But the largest biological attack in American history didn't come from any of that. It came from inside the country. It used a salad bar, and its goal wasn't mass death or terror for its own sake. Its goal was to win a county commission race. That's the part that unsettles me most. Not the horror movie version of a cult, but the cold, bureaucratic logic of it. People convinced themselves that poisoning their neighbors was just a means to an end, a tool to grab a little local power. And 751 ordinary people paid for it over a plate of lettuce. The town survived. No one died, but most of the restaurants that were poisoned never recovered and closed their doors. And the case remains a warning that sits quietly under the surface of American history. The day a community was attacked with a weapon over an election, and almost no one realized it for a year.
If you'd told the people of the Dalles sitting down to lunch in the autumn of 1984 that they were about to become the largest bioterror case in their country's history, the target of a cult trying to steal an election, they'd have thought you were insane. And that's exactly why these stories matter. The darkest chapters of history rarely announce themselves. They arrive quietly on an ordinary afternoon at a salad bar. This is Mortwick. Subscribe and hit the bell, because next time the most ordinary afternoon will be even harder to forget.